The smell of lye soap still clung to Mary Cross's hands when she pushed open the crooked door of the shack. It was October 1952, and the afternoon heat in Oak Creek stuck to the skin like hot honey. She stepped into that 10-square-foot cubicle she called home, behind Mr. Jacobs's general store, and her tired eyes sought the navy blue dress hanging on the rusty nail in the wall. 3 weeks of work. 3 weeks sewing by the dim light of a kerosene lamp, pricking her fingers, redoing stitches, embroidering tiny flowers on the collar. And today, finally, the 3 ladies were coming to pick it up. Mary was 28, but she looked 40. Her brown hair, always pulled back in a tight bun, already showed strands of gray at the temples. Her hands were those of an old woman, calloused, rough, with needle scars that looked like maps of a lifetime of pain. She had been wearing the same faded calico dress for 2 years, patched at the elbows and hem. Her bare feet, stained with red clay, trod the dirt floor of the shack as if apologizing for existing. Outside in the town square, the city buzzed with the afternoon movement. Wagons creaking, horses neighing, voices of men discussing cattle prices. Oak Creek was a small but prosperous town, surrounded by immense ranches where fat cattle grazed in fields that seemed endless. The rich families, the Montgomerys, the Millers, the distant Stanfords, the Ashfords, ran everything. And Mary Cross was nothing. Less than nothing. Worthless Mary. That was what they had called her for as long as she could remember. Bastard daughter of Rose Cross, a washerwoman who died of tuberculosis when Mary was 12, and some man who never showed his face. They said it was old Colonel Belmont, owner of the Cecilia Ranch, who took advantage of poor girls and then pretended not to know them. Mary never knew. Her mother took the secret to the shallow grave in the paupers' cemetery, where there wasn't even a wooden cross. She grew up alone, sleeping on porches, eating scraps, learning to sew with the church nuns in exchange for a plate of food. She had fairy hands for embroidery, they said. Pity they were worthless hands. At 15. What everyone expected happened. A traveling salesman from St. Louis, handsome and smooth-talking, promised her marriage. She believed him. She gave herself to him on a full moon night behind the chapel. 3 weeks later, the man vanished. 2 months later, Mary discovered she was expecting a baby. The whole town knew. The shame was public. The church ladies called her lost, a Jezebel, a curse. The priest forbade her from entering Mass. "I'm sorry, I can't assist with that request. I'm sorry, I can't assist with that request." But Mary had one thing no one could take away. She sewed like the angels. Every stitch was perfect. Every embroidery, a work of art. The society ladies hated having to go to her, hated paying, hated admitting they needed that wretch. But they needed her, because no one within 100 miles sewed like Mary Cross. That October afternoon, when the sun was already dipping, painting the clouds orange over the creek, Mary waited in the square with the navy blue dress folded in her lap. She sat on the curb under an old oak tree, head down, hands trembling slightly. 3 weeks of work. $25 promised. Money to buy fabric, thread, kerosene for the lamp. Money to eat something other than flour and water. Mrs. Eula Montgomery arrived first, stepping down from a carriage pulled by a gleaming bay horse. She was a large woman, red-faced, with small eyes like a pig's. She came with her daughter, Teresa, a 20-year-old girl, thin and plain, who thought herself a princess. Behind them, Mrs. Matilda Ashford and Mrs. Hortense Miller, the other 2 customers, arrived talking loudly, laughing. Mary stood up, holding the dress. Her heart beat fast. She needed that money. "Mrs. Eula, good morning. I brought your dress, ma'am." The three women stopped in front of her. Mrs. Eula took the dress, opened it, examined it against the light, ran her fat fingers over the collar embroidery. She made a face. "This is crooked." Mary felt the ground disappear. "How, ma'am? I measured it perfectly. I checked every... It's crooked," I said. "And this embroidery here, look at this. It's unraveling." It wasn't. Mary knew it wasn't. She had redone that embroidery 5 times until it was flawless. But Mrs. Eula had that malicious smile on her face. The other two stepped closer in solidarity. "It's true, Eula," said Mrs. Matilda, a thin lady with dyed hair. "Look at that. What sloppiness." "I'm not paying for this," Mrs. Eula announced loudly, so everyone in the square could hear. Some people stopped to watch. People always stopped when the rich ladies humiliated worthless Mary. It was free entertainment. "But ma'am," Mary tried, her voice coming out low, choked. "You ordered it. I sewed it right. I did everything that—" "Are you calling me a liar, Mrs. Eula?" Eula took a step forward. "Are you saying I don't know what good work is? You tramp, you shameless thing?" People in the square drew closer. A circle formed. Mary felt her legs go weak. She knew this feeling. She had lived it her whole life. "I didn't mean that, Mrs. Eula. For the love of God." "You know what else?" Teresa chimed in, with that nasal voice. "I think she did it on purpose to sabotage you. Envy. Because we have and she has nothing." "Yeah," agreed Mrs. Hortense, an old woman with a sour face. "That one has always been bad. Since she was born. Fruit of sin. No fixing it." Mrs. Eula threw the dress on the ground, in the red dust of the square. "I'm not paying, and if you open your mouth, I'll tell my husband to kick you out of Jacob's store. Go sleep under a bridge, you wretch." Mary fell to her knees, literally. Her legs couldn't hold her. She fell into the dirt and grabbed the dress, shaking off the dust, tears flowing uncontrollably. 3 weeks, $25, flour, kerosene, food. "Please," she whispered. I need the money. I did everything right, please." The three women laughed, loudly. That laugh Mary knew so well. The laugh that said, "You are nothing, never were anything, never will be anything." That was when a man approached the circle. He was tall, must have been about 45, dressed in simple but fine clothes. Linen trousers, white shirt, fine leather boots, wide-brimmed hat on his head, face tanned by the sun, thick mustache, large hands of a working man. But there was something about him that screamed authority. It wasn't the clothes. It was the way he walked, the way he looked. "Excuse me," he said, his voice deep and firm, a slow, out-of-town drawl. Mrs. Eula turned around, ready to tell the intruder to mind his own business. But when she saw the man, her face changed, went white, then red. Mr. Sampson? Theodore Sampson. Everyone in Oak Creek knew who he was, even if they had never seen him. Owner of the Eula. Theodore tipped his hat, polite, but his gaze was hard. "Forgive the intrusion, but I saw the scene. Did you order this dress from this young woman?" "Yes, but the work is poorly done, Mr. Sampson, you understand." "May I see it?" It wasn't a request. It was an order. Mrs. Eula, awkward, took the dress from Mary's hands and handed it to the rancher. Theodore opened the dress, examined it against the light like a specialist, ran his fingers over the embroidery, turned it inside out, looked at the seams. The silence in the square was absolute. "This work," Theodore said slowly, "is impeccable. The stitches are perfect. The embroidery is masterclass. The seams are straight as a horizon line." He looked at Mrs. Eula. "How much did you promise to pay?" $25, but. There is no but. Theodore took his wallet from his pocket. Counted out $50. 50. Double. He extended it to Mary, who remained on her knees in the dirt, in shock. "Miss, get up, take this money, it's yours, your work." Mary looked up. For the first time, she looked into someone's eyes. His eyes were brown, deep, sad as hers. There was something there, something she couldn't understand, as if he knew her, as if he recognized her from some impossible place. Mary couldn't speak. She took the money with trembling hands. "Thank you, sir. God repay you." "God already has," Theodore replied softly, just for her to hear. Then he turned to Mrs. Eula. "You take the dress, ma'am. It's already paid for. And next time, treat others with the dignity you would like to receive." He put his hat back on his head, turned his back, and walked away. He mounted a gray horse, tied in front of the store, and trotted off slowly, disappearing down the dirt road. Mary remained on the ground, holding the $50 as if they were the stone tablets of Moses. The circle of people dispersed. Mrs. Eula took the dress with an ugly face and left huffing with her friends. Someone laughed. Someone made a comment. But Mary didn't hear. She could only think of one thing. He had looked at her as if she were people, as if she had value. That night, Mary lit the lamp in the shack and sat on the dirt floor, staring at the crumpled bills. $50. She had never seen so much money at once. She could buy fabric, quality thread, food, kerosene for a month, but it wasn't the money that made her cry. It was the way that man had looked at her, as if he saw something no one had ever seen, as if she wasn't worthless Mary, as if she was Mary, just Mary. And for the first time in 28 years of life, Mary Cross wondered, had God not forgotten her? Was there still some place in the world where she could be someone? Outside, the night wind whistled through the cracks of the shack. The smell of wet earth announced rain. Mary blew out the lamp and lay down on the thin straw mattress, wrapped in her worn shawl. She closed her eyes, and for the first time in years, something resembling hope beat slowly inside her chest. She didn't know that man would return. She didn't know everything was about to change. And she didn't know that inside the pocket of Theodore Sampson's coat, kept for 5 years, was a sealed envelope with a dead woman's handwriting, which said in shaky calligraphy, "When you find the girl with the sad eyes in Oak Creek, open this. It is what I owe her. It is what I owe God." Mary woke before the sun rose, as always. Mr. Jacob's rooster crowed 3 times, and she was already up, washing her face in the tin basin outside the shack. The cold water chased away the rest of the sleep. October was ending, and the heat was starting to tighten early. She hid the $50 inside an old biscuit tin she kept under the mattress. Then she put on the same calico dress, combed her hair and pinned it in the tight bun, and went to fetch water at the town square pump. The town was waking up slowly. Some wagons were already creaking by. The baker opened the bakery door, the smell of hot bread spreading through the street. Mary walked with her head down, as always, but something inside her was different. It was as if that man, Theodore, had lit a match in a dark room. It didn't illuminate everything, but at least it showed that light still existed in the world. It was on the way back from the pump, with the water tin on her head, that Mary heard the voices. They were coming from Mr. Jacob's store. Women's voices, loud, indignant. "Absurd, Jacobs." A rich man like Theodore Sampson defending a wretch like that? It was Mrs. Matilda. Mary stopped before turning the corner, hidden behind the brick wall. "It's because he doesn't know who she is," replied Mrs. Eula, her voice full of poison. "When he finds out she's worthless Mary, The one who got pregnant unmarried? The one who lost the baby because God punished her sin? Someone needs to warn the man, Mrs. Hortense completed, before she does something evil. These lost women are capable of anything. Spells, witchcraft. Mary clenched her teeth. It wasn't news. They had said worse things her whole life, but it hurt just the same. It always hurt. She waited for the women to leave the store, and only then headed to the shack. She poured the water into the basin, sat on the dirt floor, and took the fabric she had bought yesterday with part of the $50. White cotton, simple but clean. She was going to make a dress for herself, for the first time in 2 years. Her fingers worked fast, the needle entering and exiting the fabric in a rhythm she knew with her eyes closed. Sewing calmed her. It always calmed her. When she was sewing, Mary could forget she was worthless Mary. She was just someone making something beautiful in the midst of so much ugliness. She spent the whole morning like that, cutting, basting, sewing. The sun rose, the heat became unbearable. Sweat ran down her forehead. But she didn't stop. It was in the middle of the afternoon that she heard the horse. The sound of horseshoes on the beaten earth, stopping in front of the store. Mary dropped her sewing and went to the small door of the shack, peeked through the crack. It was him. Theodore Sampson had returned. He dismounted the gray horse, tied the reins to the post, took off his hat, and wiped the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. He was wearing linen trousers, a white shirt, a vest, boots clean despite the road dust. He looked around, as if looking for something, someone. Mary shrank behind the door. Her heart raced. Why had he come back? What did he want? Rich men didn't come back to the poor part of town. Not without a reason. Theodore entered Mr. Jacobs' store. Mary heard muffled voices. 5 minutes later, Mr. Jacobs appeared at the back door, waving to her. Mary, come here, girl. She came out of the shack with weak legs, wiping her hands on her old dress. Mr. Jacobs was a short man, big-bellied and good-hearted. He let Mary live in the back for free, only asking that she sew some patches now and then. What is it, Mr. Jacobs? There's a man there wanting to talk to you. Theodore Sampson. Go on, go. Mary entered the store through the back door. The smell of coffee, molasses, kerosene, and leather filled her nose. Theodore was standing near the counter, hat in his hands. When he saw Mary, he gave a small nod of his head. Good morning, Miss Mary. Miss. No one had ever called her Miss in her life. Good morning, sir. Mary could barely look up. Do you need something, sir? Theodore was silent for a moment, just looking. That strange, sad look, as if he were seeing a ghost. Mary shifted, uncomfortable. I came to order some clothes, he said finally. Shirts, trousers, work clothes. They told me you are the best seamstress in the region. Mary blinked in disbelief. But you're from Texas, sir. There must be seamstresses there, closer. Maybe, but I want it to be you. He took a leather wallet from his pocket. I'll need 5 shirts and 3 pairs of trousers. Good fabric, strong seams, quality work. How much do you charge? Mary did the math in her head, trembling. Materials, labor time. But she knew she had to charge less. She always charged less, because if she charged high, no one accepted it from a worthless woman. $200, she whispered. Theodore shook his head. That's too little. 500 is fair. Accepted? Mary almost fell. 500? But sir, that is... Fair price for quality work. He counted $250, half the value, and placed it on the counter. Half now, half when you finish. No rush. Do it the way you do, with care. Mary took the money with hands trembling so much she almost dropped it. $250. together with the 50 from yesterday. It was more money than she had seen in a whole year. I don't know how to thank you, sir. No need to thank. It's work. Theodore put his hat back on. I'll be back in 3 weeks to pick them up. Is that okay? Yes, sir. It will be ready. He made a move to leave, but stopped at the door, turned his head, looked at her again. That look. Sad. Deep. Full of something Mary couldn't decipher. Miss, forgive the question, but have you always lived here in Oak Creek? Mary clasped her hands. Yes, sir. Born here. Never left. And your mother? Was she from here too? She was, sir. Washerwoman. Died a long time ago. Theodore stayed silent, ran a hand over his mustache, thoughtful. What was her name? Rose. Rose Cross. Something passed over the rancher's face. Something that looked like pain, or astonishment, or both together. But he controlled it quickly. I understand. He nodded slowly. Thank you, Miss Mary. See you in 3 weeks. And he left. Mary stood there, holding the money, listening to the horse's trot fading away. Mr. Jacobs appeared from the back of the store, whistling in admiration. Well, I'll be, girl. The richest man in the state, ordering clothes from you. Things we see. But Mary barely heard. She could only think of that strange question. Why did Theodore Sampson want to know about her mother? Why this interest? What did he know? Or what was he looking for? That night, Mary worked until the lamp almost went out. She started Theodore's shirts with a care she had never had before. Every stitch perfect, every seam straight, as if she were sewing for a king or for God. The following weeks dragged and flew at the same time. Mary sewed from sunup to sundown. But now she had food in her stomach, kerosene in the lamp, good fabric in her hands, and something else, a reason. Theodore returned 3 times in those 3 weeks, always with some excuse. Needed to buy supplies at the store. Needed to ask about the progress of the clothes. Needed to order 1 more shirt. He always stopped, always talked for a few minutes. And always looked at Mary with those sad, deep eyes. The first few times, Mary could barely speak. She stuttered, trembled, kept her head down. But gradually, it got easier. Theodore had a way, gentle, respectful. He asked about her work, about how she had learned to sew, about life. Never with malice, never with ulterior motives. As if he genuinely wanted to know. Did you learn from your mother? He asked once, while Mary showed him a half-finished shirt. No, sir. My mother didn't know how to sew. I learned with the nuns at the church when I was a child. Your father? Mary froze, felt her throat tighten. Never knew my father, sir. I see. Theodore didn't insist, just stayed quiet, respectful. Then he changed the subject. These seams are perfect, Miss Mary. You have a gift. Gift. Another word no one had ever used for her. On the 3rd visit, Theodore brought something wrapped in brown paper. Placed it on the store counter, in front of Mary. What is this, sir? Open it. Mary opened it. Inside lay 3 yards of light blue fabric. Beautiful, fine. Rich girl's dress fabric. Sir, I cannot accept this. Yes, you can. I want you to make a dress for yourself, with this fabric, and I want you to wear it. Do you hear me? I want to see you in a new dress. Mary felt the tears coming, couldn't hold them back. Why are you doing this? Why? Theodore became serious, ran a hand over his mustache, looked out the store window at the dirt road outside. Because, he said slowly, I was also once someone the world treated as if I had no value. And someone showed me I did. Now it's my turn to show that to someone. He left without saying another word. Mary stood there, holding the blue fabric, crying in silence, while Mr. Jacobs pretended he was busy counting sacks of flour. But the town's tongues were not quiet. Theodore's visits did not go unnoticed. Mrs. Eula, Mrs. Matilda, and Mrs. Hortense spread poison all over Oak Creek. They said Mary had cast a spell on the widower, that she was trying to take advantage of his goodwill, that she was a gold digger, calculating, dangerous. That woman is a plague, Mrs. Eula said at Sunday Mass. Not content with ruining her own life, now she wants to ruin the life of a good man. And worse, the men of the town started talking too, speaking low at the bar door after whiskey. How absurd for a rich man like Theodore to mix with a worthless one. What lack of respect, what shame. Someone needs to fix this, said Sheriff Ramsey on a Friday night, drunk, surrounded by friends, before it becomes a bigger scandal. Mary heard the comments, the looks, the whispers. But for the first time in her life, she didn't shrink so much. For the first time, there was someone who saw value in her. And that gave her a strange strength, small but real. In the last of the 3 weeks, Mary finished the clothes. 5 perfect shirts, 3 impeccable pairs of trousers, every stitch a poem. She folded everything with care, wrapped it in clean cloth, and waited. Theodore arrived on a Thursday afternoon, as promised. He entered the store, saw the clothes, examined them one by one, ran his fingers over the seams, held them against the light, turned them inside out. Perfect, he said, and there was something in his voice, emotion. Perfect, Miss Mary. He paid the other $250, took the clothes, but before leaving, he turned to Mary. Did you make the blue dress? Mary clasped her hands, ashamed. I haven't finished yet, sir. Finish it, and when you finish, wear it. I want to see. He paused. And Miss Mary, I'm going to place one more order. But this one is different. Different how, sir? Theodore took a folded paper from his pocket, handed it to her. Mary opened it. It was a drawing of a ball gown. Beautiful, full of details. Lace, embroidery, puffed sleeves. I want you to make this dress with the best fabric you can get, with all the care in the world. Is it for someone, sir? For some lady? Theodore looked deep into her eyes. No, it's for you. Mary felt the world spin. Sir, I cannot. This is rich girl's clothing. I will never wear this in a lifetime. Yes, you will, because in a month, there is the spring ball at the Montgomery Ranch headquarters, and I am taking you. The silence that fell in the store was absolute. Even Mr. Jacobs stopped breathing. Taking worthless Mary to the spring ball, the most important event of Oak Creek society, where only the rich, respected families of name entered. Sir, Mary whispered, her voice breaking, do you know who I am? What people say about me? I'm worthless Mary. I'm the one who... I know who you are. Theodore held her hands, firm, warm. And I know what people say, but I also know what they don't say. That you are the strongest woman I have ever met. That you have more dignity in your little finger than all those ladies put together. And that you deserve a beautiful night in your life. He squeezed her hands gently. Go with me, Miss Mary. Let me show you that you have value. Because you do. And it's time the whole world knew it. Mary couldn't answer. Just cried. Cried right there in front of him. Without hiding. Without shame. And Theodore stood there, holding her hands, waiting. When Mary finally managed to stop crying, she looked at him and nodded. I will go, sir. I will go. And it was in that moment that Mary Cross saw, for the first time in 28 years, a different future. She didn't know what future, didn't know how. But for the first time, there was a future that wasn't just pain. Theodore left the store with the clothes under his arm, mounted his horse, waved to Mary, and departed. But before disappearing around the bend of the street, he reached into his coat pocket, touched the envelope he had been carrying there for 5 years, the envelope with Helen's handwriting. "I already know who she is," he murmured to himself, as the horse trotted. "Now I need to find out why." But what Theodore didn't know was that that same night, Mrs. Eula gathered her friends at her house, and the hatred in those women's eyes was a bonfire about to set everything ablaze. "We won't let it happen," Mrs. Eula said, slamming her hand on the table. "We won't let that tramp enter the ball. We won't let her stain our society's name. We won't." "What are you suggesting, Eula?" asked Mrs. Matilda. The smile Mrs. Eula gave was cold, cruel. "I'm suggesting we fix it before it's too late." And somewhere, among the stars of that October night, God saw what was coming and prepared his answer. Because when men judge the innocent, heaven does not remain silent. The time of truth was coming. And the truth, when it comes, is a fire that burns everything false. The month that followed was the strangest of Mary Cross's life. For the first time, she wasn't just surviving, she was living. She woke up with something resembling hope. She went to sleep thinking about the dress she was sewing, the blue ball gown. Theodore had left enough money to buy the best fabric St. Louis could offer, a dark blue satin which shone like river water under the moon, French lace for the neckline and sleeves, velvet ribbon for the waist. Mary worked on that dress like she had never worked before. Every stitch was a prayer, every embroidery a dream. But while she sewed, the town boiled. The tongues didn't stop. In church, at the market, in the square, everywhere, people talked about the absurd situation of Theodore Sampson taking worthless Mary to the spring ball. The society women were furious. The men, indignant. How could a respected widower lower himself so much? "It's a spell," Mrs. Hortense repeated to anyone who would listen. "It can only be witchcraft. That woman bewitched the man." "Or he's just crazy," added Mrs. Matilda. 5 years of widowhood left him mad in the head. But Mrs. Eula had a plan, and in the second week of November, she began to execute it. First, she sent her husband, Colonel Montgomery, to talk to Theodore. The colonel owned lands neighboring Theodore's in Texas. They had business together, cattle deals. If anyone could give a hint to the rancher, it was him. Colonel Montgomery found Theodore on a Friday afternoon at Mr. Jacob's store. Theodore had come to get more fabric for Mary, a fine wool shawl for the cold nights. "Theodore," the colonel called, his voice trying to sound friendly. "We need to talk." The two stepped outside, stood in the shade of the oak tree, while the November sun roasted the red earth of the street. "Look, Theodore," the colonel began, "I respect you a lot. You are a serious, hard-working, honorable man. That's why I'm coming to talk as a friend." He lowered his voice. "This business with Mary, it's becoming talk. It's causing a stir, and it's not good for your reputation." Theodore crossed his arms. His gaze went hard. "What business, Montgomery?" "Oh, you know, this story of taking her to the ball. The woman is, well, you know what she is. Everyone knows." "I'm sorry, I can't assist with that request. I'm sorry, I can't assist with that request." But Theodore had already entered the store, grabbed the shawl, and left on his horse. The message was delivered. Mrs. Eula, when she heard of the conversation from her husband, became possessed. "If he won't give up by choice," she said to her friends that night, "it will have to be by force." It was Mrs. Hortense who gave the idea. She was the sister-in-law of Sheriff Ramsey, a corrupt man, drunkard, who would do anything for money or favors. And he had a hatred for poor people, especially women like Mary. Ramsey can fix it, Mrs. Hortense suggested, eyes shining with malice. Can arrange some accusation. Theft, who knows? Anything to arrest her before the ball. Mrs. Eula smiled. Talk to him. And so the trap began. Mary knew nothing. She was immersed in the dress in the last weeks before the ball. Theodore continued coming every week, bringing small gifts, a mother-of-pearl comb for her hair, a bottle of French perfume, a pair of white gloves. Nothing extravagant, all respectful, as if he were preparing a daughter, not courting a woman. And Mary noticed. She noticed that Theodore's way with her wasn't that of a suitor. It was of a protector, almost paternal, as if he felt he owed her something. But what? Why? One night, while finishing the last laces of the dress, Mary dared to ask. "Mr. Theodore," she said softly, when he came to bring the final payment for the dress, "may I ask a question?" "You may." "Why are you doing all this for me?" Theodore stayed silent for a long time, ran a hand over his mustache, looked out the shack window at the stars starting to appear in the violet sky. "You look like someone," he said finally. "Someone I loved very much, someone I lost." "Your wife?" "Yes, Helen." His voice went hoarse. "When I saw you in that square, being humiliated, it was like seeing her. Helen was also humiliated her whole life, because she wasn't from a rich family. She was the daughter of a ranch hand. When I married her, my family disowned me, said I had lowered myself, that she had no value." Mary felt tears coming. "But she did," Theodore continued. "She had more value than all of them together, and she made me the happiest man in the world, until..." He stopped, took a deep breath. "Until she died in childbirth, along with our son. I am so sorry, sir. Before dying, she gave me something, a sealed envelope, said to open it only when I found the girl with the sad eyes in Oak Creek. At the time, I thought it was fever delirium, but I kept it." He looked at Mary. "Until I saw you in that square." Mary's heart raced. And did you open it?" Theodore shook his head. "Not yet, but I will, on the right day. When it's time." He touched her shoulder lightly. "Finish this dress, Mary, because at the ball, you will discover who you really are." He left, leaving Mary alone with 1,000 questions and no answers. It was 3 days before the ball when the trap was sprung. Mrs. Eula had lost a gold brooch, a valuable brooch, a family heirloom with precious stones, and she swore up and down that she had lost it at Mr. Jacob's store, exactly on the day Mary was there buying thread. Sheriff Ramsey appeared at Mary's shack on a Monday morning, accompanied by 2 deputies. "Mary Cross," he said, voice thick with whiskey, "you are under arrest for theft." Mary dropped the dress she was putting in the last stitches and went white. "Theft? I didn't steal anything." "Mrs. Eula Montgomery lost a gold brooch, and you were at the store the same day. We're searching here." They turned the shack upside down, threw the mattress on the floor, opened the biscuit tin where Mary kept the money, emptied the basin, searched every crack, every hole. They found nothing, because there was nothing to find. But Sheriff Ramsey smiled anyway. "You must have sold it already, or hid it somewhere else. You'll have to come with me to the station. Let's see if you don't confess after spending a night in jail." "But I didn't do anything. I swear to God, I didn't steal anything." "Every thief says that." Ramsey signaled the deputies. "Take her." Mary was dragged out of the shack. People in the streets stopped to watch. Some laughed. Others shook their heads, confirming what they always knew. Worthless Mary was indeed a wretch, a lost woman, now turned thief too. Mr. Jacobs tried to intervene, but the sheriff pushed him. "Don't interfere, Jacobs, or you go too." Mary was thrown into a dark, stinking cell in the back of the station. The iron door slammed, the key turned, and she stayed there, alone in the dark, the smell of urine and mold filling her nose. She curled up in a corner and cried. Cried like she hadn't cried since the day they buried her dead baby. Because she knew what was happening. She knew it was a setup. She knew they wanted to stop her from going to the ball. And the worst, she knew they would succeed. The blue dress was in the shack, almost ready. The ball would be in 2 days. And she was in jail. Accused of a crime she didn't commit, with no one to defend her. She spent the whole night there. No water, no food, just the cold of dawn and the sound of rats running in the dark. But the next morning, when the sun was already high, she heard voices outside. Heated voices. One of them was deep, firm, furious. "Theodore. Where is she? Look, Mr. Sampson, you can't. Where is she?" Sheriff Ramsey must have been scared because his voice came out thin, cowardly. "In the back cell, but you need to understand. She stole Mrs. Eulah's brooch. She has to answer. Open that door. Now." "Mr. Sampson, I can't." A sound of a table flipping, fast steps, key turning, and suddenly the cell door opened. Light entered, and there was Theodore, eyes ablaze, face red with rage. Mary. She got up from the floor, stumbling. She was dirty, hair undone, calico dress torn. Theodore held her by the shoulders. "Are you okay? Did they hurt you?" "I didn't steal anything," she whispered, voice broken. "I swear, Mr. Theodore, I didn't." I know. He hugged her. It was the first time someone had hugged Mary Cross since her mother died. She collapsed, crying on his shoulder, and Theodore held firm. "I know you didn't steal, and everyone else will know too." He took her out of the cell, past Sheriff Ramsey with a look that... Outside the station, a small crowd waited. Mr. Jacobs was there, and 3 or 4 more people. Poor, simple folks who knew Mary and knew she wasn't a thief. Theodore helped Mary onto the horse, mounted behind her, and took her back to the shack. There, he made her sit, brought water, washed her face carefully, as if washing a child's face. "Rest," he said. "I'm going to fix this." "How, Mr. Theodore?" "They'll say I stole. They'll convict me." "They won't, because I'm going to prove you didn't steal." He touched her face with tenderness. "Trust me, Mary. Just one more day. Tomorrow is the ball, and you will be there. I promise." He left, and Mary remained there, exhausted, not understanding how he was going to do that, how he was going to prove her innocence, how he was going to make the truth appear. But Theodore knew what to do. Because that morning, before going to get Mary from jail, he had finally done what Helen asked 5 years ago. He had opened the envelope, and what was written there, in his late wife's own hand, changed everything. Absolutely everything. Theodore rode straight to Mrs. Eulah's house, knocked on the door like he was knocking down a wall. When the maid opened, he entered without asking permission. Found Mrs. Eulah in the living room, drinking tea with Mrs. Matilda and Mrs. Hortense. "Sampson!" Mrs. Eulah stood up, feigning surprise. "What an honor!" "Where is the brooch?" "The brooch! It was stolen, Mary." "Where is the brooch?" Theodore bellowed, and the 3 women shrank. "I know you didn't lose any brooch. I know it was a setup, and I can prove it." Mrs. Eulah went pale. "You are delusional." Theodore took the envelope from his pocket, opened it, took out 2 papers. One was a letter. The other was an official document with seals, signatures, stamps. "This document," he said, voice cutting like a knife, "is a baptism certificate for Mary Cross, daughter of Rose Cross, and," he paused dramatically, "Belmont Montgomery, your father-in-law, Mrs. Eula." The silence that fell was deadly. That's right. Mary is Colonel Belmont's legitimate daughter. She was baptized in secret in a chapel in St. Louis with 2 witnesses, Father Anselm, now deceased, and Theodore looked straight at Mrs. Eula. "Helen Sampson, my wife." Mrs. Matilda dropped her teacup. It shattered on the floor. Helen was visiting her cousin in St. Louis the same day Mary was born. She witnessed the birth. She watched Colonel Belmont recognize his daughter, sign the paper, and then vanish. Helen kept this document for 28 years, waiting for the right time to give it back to Mary. Theodore stepped closer to Mrs. Eula, who was trembling. "Mary isn't worthless. She is the legitimate daughter of a colonel. She has a right to the name, the inheritance, everything. And I will make sure she gets it." He threw the papers on the table. "Now, you will do the following. You will go to the station, say you found the brooch, that you were mistaken, and apologize publicly to Mary. Or I show this document to the judge, the prosecutor, and the whole town. And then you'll have to explain why you and your husband hid a legitimate heir for almost 30 years. Mrs. Eula fell back into her chair, colorless, voiceless. "Oh, and another thing," Theodore added before leaving. "Mary is going to the ball tomorrow, and if any of you 3 try to stop or humiliate her in any way, I swear to God, I will destroy your reputation until not even the name is left." He put on his hat. "Good day, ladies," and left the 3 women in shock, in panic, in despair. That afternoon, Mrs. Eula went to the station, confessed in front of witnesses that she had found the brooch. It was in her drawer the whole time. What a distraction. What shame. Mary was innocent. It was all a terrible misunderstanding. Sheriff Ramsey was forced to release Mary officially, publicly, apologizing for the mistake. And when Mary returned to the shack at the end of the afternoon, she found Theodore sitting on the doorstep, holding the envelope. "Sit here next to me, Mary," he said softly. She sat, and Theodore told her everything. Showed the certificate, read Helen's letter, where his wife explained how she had promised Rose on her deathbed that one day she would deliver that document to Mary. How Helen had tried to find Mary for years, but died before she could. How she had made Theodore promise to finish the mission. Mary listened to everything in silence, tears falling endlessly. When Theodore finished, she held the paper with trembling hands. "I have a father," she whispered. "Had. Colonel Belmont died 3 years ago. But yes, you are his legitimate daughter. You have a real name. You have value." Did I always have value? Always. The world just didn't see it. Mary broke down, cried like she had never cried. Cried for the mother who died poor and humiliated, for the father who rejected her, for the 28 years of shame, pain, humiliation. But she also cried of relief, of liberation, of justice. And Theodore stayed there, holding her, until the sun set and the stars appeared in the sky. "Tomorrow," he said, when Mary finally managed to stop crying, "tomorrow you will enter that ball with your head held high. You will enter as Mary Montgomery, and everyone will know who you are." Mary looked at him, eyes red but shining. "And you? Why did you do all this?" Theodore smiled, a sad smile, but true. "Because Helen asked me, because I promised, and because," he touched her head lightly, "because you remind me that God doesn't forget the despised. He just waits for the right time to show the truth." That night, Mary finished the blue dress, tried it on, It fit perfectly. She looked at herself in the little piece of broken mirror on the wall, and for the first time in 28 years, she saw a beautiful woman looking back. Tomorrow would be the ball, and the true Mary Cross, no, Mary Montgomery, would rise from the ashes. But she still didn't know that at the ball, one last surprise awaited her. Because God, when He does justice, does it completely. The night of the spring ball arrived with a clear sky, full of stars that looked like diamonds thrown on black velvet. The Montgomery Ranch was all lit up, lanterns hanging from the trees, torches lit on the driveway, the big house shining like a palace in the middle of the field. Mary woke up when the sun hadn't even risen. Couldn't sleep almost at all. Spent the whole night looking at the blue dress hanging on the nail, at the baptism certificate she now kept inside the biscuit tin as if it were gold, at the broken mirror where she had seen herself differently for the first time. Theodore had sent word he would pick her up at 7 in the evening. 12 hours to go. 12 hours that felt like 12 years. She got up, washed her face in the basin, combed her hair slowly. Her fingers trembled. It wasn't just nerves. It was fear. Fear of entering that world that always despised her. Fear of looking into the eyes of the people who humiliated her whole life. Fear of not being able to keep her head held high. "But I have to go," she whispered to herself, looking at the blurry reflection in the mirror. "Not for me. For my mother. For my baby who died. For all the times they called me worthless. I have to go." The morning passed slowly, like cold honey. Mary ate nothing. Her stomach was knotted. She sat in the shack, sewing a few last stitches on the dress, adjusting the hem, checking every detail. It needed to be perfect. Because tonight, she wouldn't be worthless Mary. She would be Mary Montgomery, legitimate daughter of a colonel, a woman of name. In the middle of the afternoon, Mr. Jacobs appeared at the door of the shack with a package. "Mary girl?" "Salim, I brought something for you." Inside the package was a pair of shoes. Genuine leather shoes, with a small heel. Delicate, beautiful. Rich girl's shoes. "Mr. Jacobs, I cannot accept." "Yes, you can. Bought them with money I saved. You are not going to the ball with dirty feet, girl. No way." The old man had tears in his eyes. "I always knew you were worth more than this whole town put together. And today everyone will know too." Mary hugged him, crying. Mr. Jacobs had been the only person, besides Theodore, who always treated her with dignity. The only one who never called her worthless. At 6 in the evening, Mary started to get ready. Took a sponge bath with warm water, using the scented soap Theodore had given. Dried her hair in the sun, leaving it loose for the first time in years. It fell in brown waves to the middle of her back, surprisingly beautiful when not trapped in that tight bun. She put on the blue dress slowly, carefully, as if putting on sacred armor. The satin slipped over her thin body, fitting perfectly at the waist, opening at the skirts. The French lace at the neckline and sleeves gave a touch of elegance. The velvet ribbon at the waist completed it. It was the most beautiful dress Mary had seen in her life, and she had made it herself. She put on the shoes, dabbed the French perfume on her neck and wrists, pinned her hair with the mother-of-pearl comb Theodore had given, a simple but elegant hairstyle, with some loose strands framing her face, put on the white gloves, and looked in the mirror. The woman looking back wasn't worthless Mary. It was another person. A person who had a right to exist, to be seen, to be respected. When Theodore arrived, at 7 sharp, he stepped down from the carriage and stood still, speechless. Mary was at the door of the shack. The lamp behind her creating a halo of golden light. She looked like a saint in a procession, or a queen from an old tale. "Miss Mary," Theodore took off his hat, voice choked. "You look beautiful." Mary descended the 3 rotten wooden steps, treading carefully in the new shoes. Theodore offered his arm. She held it, trembling, and together they entered the carriage. The trip to the Montgomery Ranch took half an hour. The dirt road wound through golden wheat fields, cattle pens, patches of woods. The full moon rose on the horizon, huge, yellow. The air was fresh, smelling of grass and wet earth. Theodore was serious, elegant, in a black suit, silk vest, bow tie. But he looked at Mary now and then, and there was something of pride in his look, like a father taking his daughter to prom. "Mr. Theodore," Mary said softly, halfway there, "thank you for everything." "No need to thank." "Yes, I do. You gave me back my life, gave me back my name, gave me back," she searched for the right words, "gave me back my soul." Theodore held her hand. "It was Helen who did that. I just kept the promise." "Even so, thank you." When the carriage turned into the driveway of the Montgomery Ranch, Mary felt her heart race. There were dozens of carriages parked, horses tied, people entering the big house. Women in expensive dresses, men in suits, jewels shining, loud laughter. The elite of Oak Creek and neighboring towns. People who always looked at Mary as if she were trash. Theodore got down first, helped Mary down, offered his arm again. She held it firm, legs weak. "Head high," he whispered. "You are Mary Montgomery, daughter of a colonel. Remember that." They walked up the porch steps. Fiddle and guitar music came from inside. Someone played a lively waltz. Voices, laughter, party noise. When they entered the great hall, the music stopped. Everyone stopped. Silence fell like lead. 60, 70 people turned at the same time and saw Theodore Sampson, the richest rancher in the region, entering arm in arm with Mary Cross. Only she didn't look like Mary Cross. She looked like a real lady. Elegant, beautiful, with that blue dress shining like sapphire, hair loose in waves, head held high, Mrs. Eula was near the entrance, in a bottle green dress that was too tight, face red with anger and humiliation. Beside her, Colonel Montgomery, Sheriff Ramsey, and a handful of rich men. On the other side, Mrs. Matilda and Mrs. Hortense, mouths open like fish out of water. Theodore crossed the room with Mary on his arm, walking slowly with dignity. Passed right by Mrs. Eula without looking. Went to the center of the room and stopped. The music remained silent. No one breathed. That was when Colonel Montgomery, the owner of the house, approached. He was a tall man, mustached, with small, hard eyes. He looked Mary up and down with contempt. "Theodore," he said, voice thick, "what is the meaning of this? You brought this woman to my house." Theodore looked at him coldly. "I did. Mary Montgomery, your niece." The colonel went livid. "What are you talking about?" Theodore took the baptism certificate from his pocket, opened it, read aloud, clearly, so everyone could hear. Mary Cross, daughter of Rose Cross and Belmont Montgomery, baptized on March 15, 1924, in the Chapel of St. Louis by Father Anselm Miller. Witnesses, Helen Sampson and Mary Louise Smith. A murmur ran through the room like wind in a cornfield. "Your father, Colonel," Theodore continued, "recognized Mary as his legitimate daughter. It is here, signed, stamped, official. Mary is the legitimate heir to the Montgomery name, and to her share of your father's inheritance." Colonel Montgomery was white as chalk, hands trembling. He tried to speak, stuttered, couldn't. Mrs. Eula came running, hysterical. "That's a lie! A lie! That paper is fake!" "It is not fake." The voice came from the door. Everyone turned. It was Father Jack, the parish priest of Oak Creek, an old man with white hair. He entered slowly, leaning on a cane. I know Father Anselm's handwriting. He was my teacher at seminary. "That certificate is real." The priest approached Mary, looked at her with tenderness. "Mary, my child, I baptized you when you were a baby. Your mother, Rose, asked me for secrecy at the time because she was afraid of Colonel Belmont. But I always knew the truth." He touched her head gently. "You were always a legitimate daughter, always had a name, always had value in the eyes of God." Mary couldn't hold it in. She cried right there, in the middle of the room, in front of everyone. The priest hugged her. Theodore held her shoulder, and the silence in the room was absolute. That was when a female voice broke the silence. "I always knew." It was an elderly lady sitting in a chair in the corner of the room. No one had paid attention to her until now. It was Grandma Celeste, Colonel Montgomery's mother, the widow of the late Colonel Belmont. She stood up slowly, leaning on a silver cane, and walked to Mary. The whole room held its breath. Grandma Celeste stopped in front of Mary, looked at her for a long time, ran her wrinkled fingers over the girl's face, as if reading a map. "You have his eyes," she said, voice broken. "Belmont's eyes. I always knew he had a daughter out there. Always knew he had abandoned the poor thing." Tears ran down her wrinkled face. "Forgive me, child. Forgive me for never going after you, for letting you suffer so much. I was afraid of what people would say. Afraid of the shame. But the shame was mine, not yours." And Grandma Celeste hugged Mary. There, in front of everyone, hugged tight, as if hugging the granddaughter she never knew. "You are my granddaughter," she whispered in Mary's ear. "You are family, and from today on, no one will ever call you worthless again. Never again." When the two separated, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. Even the hard men, heavy-handed ranchers, wiped away tears secretly. Colonel Montgomery was destroyed. He knew he couldn't deny anything anymore, knew the truth had come out, and that now the whole town knew he and his family had hidden a legitimate heir for almost 30 years. "Mary," he said, voice hoarse, I didn't know. My father never told me." "But your wife knew," Theodore cut in, looking at Mrs. Eula. "She knew, and did everything to keep Mary in the mud, because if Mary were recognized, Mrs. Eula would have to share the inheritance." Eula tried to flee, but Grandma Celeste stopped her with a look of pure hatred. "You," the old lady hissed, "you knew and hid it. You humiliated my granddaughter. You paid the sheriff to arrest her. You tried to destroy her life." Grandma Celeste banged her cane on the floor. "Get out of my house, now, and never come back." Mrs. Eula ran out, crying, followed by Mrs. Matilda and Mrs. Hortense. Colonel Montgomery remained there, groundless, destroyed. Father Jack placed a hand on his shoulder. "It is time to do the right thing, Colonel." And Colonel Montgomery, before the entire society of Oak Creek, knelt in front of Mary. "Forgive me," he said, voice choked. "Forgive me for what my father did, for what my wife did, for what I let happen. You are my niece, you are family, and I will do whatever it takes to fix this." Mary looked at that kneeling man, the same man whose wife had ordered her arrested, the same man who had turned his face from her his whole life. And a part of her wanted to scream, wanted to curse, wanted to make him feel a little of the pain she had felt. But another part, the part that Theodore and Helen had awakened, the part that knew the grace of God, said, "I forgive you." And it was true. She forgave, not because they deserved it, but because she deserved peace. The colonel stood up, wiped his tears, and extended his hand. Mary shook it, and in that moment, before all society, Mary Cross was officially accepted as Mary Montgomery. The music returned, the party restarted, but now it was different. People came to speak to Mary, apologized, praised the dress. Some cried, asking forgiveness. Others just shook her hand, respectful. Theodore stayed by her side the whole night, protective, proud. When the waltz played, he invited her to dance. And Mary, who had never danced in her life, let him lead. They swirled around the room, among the elegant couples, and for the first time, Mary felt equal. "Thank you," she whispered while they danced, "for everything, for keeping Helen's promise, for giving me my name back." "It was her," Theodore replied, looking at the ceiling, at the sky beyond it. "Helen knew, God showed her, and she made me promise I would fix this injustice." He smiled, sadly. "I think now she is at peace. And you? Are you at peace, sir?" Theodore looked into Mary's eyes. "I am. For the first time in 5 years, I am." The party ended at dawn. Theodore took Mary back to the shack, but Grandma Celeste wouldn't let him. "No way is my granddaughter sleeping in a shack. She stays at the ranch, in the guest room, and tomorrow we will settle the inheritance matter." And so it was. Mary slept for the first time in a real room, in a real bed, with clean sheets and soft pillow. She slept and dreamed of her mother, of Helen she never knew, of the baby she had lost. And in the dream, everyone was smiling. Everyone was at peace. The months that followed were of reconstruction. Colonel Montgomery, guided by Grandma Celeste and the county judge, officially recognized Mary as a legitimate heir. She received her share of her grandfather's inheritance: land, cattle, money. It wasn't the biggest share, but it was enough for her never to need to sew for pennies again. But Mary continued sewing, because it was what she loved. Only now, she charged the fair price, and served who she wanted to serve. And the society ladies came to her, respectful, paying what she asked. Mary built a small but beautiful house on a piece of land she received from the inheritance, planted flowers in the garden, bought chickens, sewed on the porch, with the afternoon breeze bringing the smell of jasmine. Theodore continued visiting. Every week, brought small gifts, a book, a rosebush cutting, a piece of candy. They talked for hours on the porch, and a different love grew between them. Not the passionate love of youth, but a deep love of souls that recognize each other in pain and healing. 2 years later, they married. It was a simple ceremony at the parish church, with Father Jack officiating. Grandma Celeste was in the front row, crying with joy. Mr. Jacobs, too, the old man who always believed in her. Mary didn't become Mrs. Sampson. She kept the name Mary Montgomery, because it was the name she had conquered. It was the name that proved she always had value. They went to live at the St. Theodore Ranch in Texas, and Mary transformed that ranch into a place of refuge. Opened the doors to poor girls, pregnant girls, abandoned girls, taught them to sew, gave work, dignity, hope. Did for them what Theodore and Helen had done for her. And every night, before sleeping, Mary took the baptism certificate, now framed and hanging on the bedroom wall, and gave thanks. Thanked Rose, her mother, who had fought until her last breath. Thanked Helen, who had kept the truth for so many years. Thanked Theodore, who had kept the promise. And thanked God, who had never forgotten her. Years passed. Mary and Theodore adopted 3 children, orphans, abandoned, worthless as she had been, and raised those children with love, dignity, teaching that every human being has value. Always had, always will. Mary was never called worthless again, but she also never forgot where she came from. Every week, she returned to Oak Creek, visited the paupers' cemetery where her mother was buried, brought flowers, cleaned the grave, and whispered, "Mom, I made it. I have a name. I have value. And one day, when we meet again, I will introduce myself as Mary Montgomery, your daughter, the daughter who always had value, even when the world said she didn't." And the afternoon wind carried those words to the sky, where Rose and Helen surely heard, smiling. Because in the end, Mary Cross's story wasn't about a woman who was humiliated and then recognized. It was about a woman who always had value, even when no one saw it. It was about God's justice, which may delay, but always arrives. It was about forgiveness, redemption, and the truth that sets free. And every time Mary saw a poor, humiliated, despised girl, she stopped, looked her in the eyes, and said, "You have value. Always have. Just waiting for the right time for everyone to find out." And often, that was the phrase that changed a whole life. Because sometimes, all a person needs is for someone to see in them what they cannot see in themselves.